This is part number 9 and this is the last part about equipment. So you almost made it. But if you thought that all this stuff we have already covered is everything, unfortunately it isn't. As always, there's a lot of nitty-gritty things which are also needed. And for today I will introduce you to 5 of these groups. And that is everything that is needed to get rid of the dew. That is all the stuff you need to connect your telescope to the rig. Third, what you can use to cover your telescope if you leave it outside. Number 4, the best way to do flats, and we will discuss later on what flats are. And last but not least, everything connected to power management. And we do all that right after the trailer. So let's dive right into it with group number 1, everything to get rid of the dew. You might ask, dew, where, what? Remember that we move the telescope outside in the night where it gets cold. And the colder it gets, the more it lowers the dew point, which means the moment there's too much water in the air, and it will settle wherever it can, preferably on the lenses of your telescope. And if you don't prevent that, after a certain time of shooting, the shooting will be over because there's water on your lens and nothing can be seen anymore. So what can we do against it? Now, if you choose a refractor like this one, it has an integrated dew shield. And you can see that I can draw this out, and if you look now inside, you see that this goes way in front of the lens, which is inside. So it creates actually a massive space in front of the lens, so it's quite harder for the humidity to come inside and settle on your lens. That is not perfect, but it helps. If you use, for example, a Schmidt Cassegrain, they do not have these integrated dew shields, but optionally you can buy something like this here with Velcro, which you put around the telescope and close down. And it does exactly the same as the integrated dew shield of a refractor. Also, that is great, but it's not perfect. If the dew point is really low, it will not be sufficient to protect you from the dew. So what you need are dew heaters. And I show it here on the guide scope. Yes, also the guide scopes have the same issues. Also the guide scopes need to be protected from dew. And what you see here, what I have around the guide scope, is like a band. It's about on the height where the lens is. And what it has inside is a heating element. So you connect that to an energy source and it will heat the lens. And with that, your dew problem is solved. So I would absolutely recommend that for each telescope, for each guide scope, you buy such a dew heater. They're not expensive and they will save you a lot of pain when it's cold outside. Now the second group I want to talk about is everything you need to connect equipment to your scope or to actually connect your telescope to the mount. On one side, these are dovetails. These are nothing more than metal bars which you can actually screw a telescope on and then connect it to your mount. But make no mistake, as we all know in astrophotography, also a simple metal bar like this can cost a fortune. We see here also, for example, on the guide scope, such a dovetail installed, and so it can easily then be connected to the mount. The other thing you will come across are spacers. And this is a little bit of a running joke. All these elements here are individual spacers that I own. I don't need them. I just, along the way, they pile up, and with time you will have your own spacer collection. They're needed actually to create the right back focus between the telescope and the camera. And every time you buy another equipment piece, the distance will vary, and obviously your spacer will not fit, so you will need something in addition. They come in all sizes from very thin to very thick. They come also in different diameters depending on your scope camera combination. And there's even very thin ones which you can put in between here to get to the 0.5 millimeter the back focus correct. These are obviously only two examples of a variety of different equipment parts that you can buy to connect everything together. The third group I want to cover is covers to leave your telescope outside. Now that obviously depends on your situation. If you don't have your own garden, your own terrace, most likely this will not be relevant to you. You will every time have to haul your equipment to a dark place and then in the morning haul it back to your home. But if you have a safe place where theoretically you could leave your telescope outside, there is still the question, should you do that? What if it will rain over the day, unexpectedly, for example? What if the sun is shining by 35 degrees Celsius? Should you leave it outside? Now, from all what I've heard, from a heat point of view, it shouldn't be a big issue. So that's something you have less to worry about. The bigger issues are dust, dew obviously, especially for example in the morning, and obviously rain. The biggest fear that we all have, that our equipment, which is not waterproof, I just have to very clearly state that, neither your telescope nor anything else is waterproof. It usually can deal very well with dew, but if there's a thunderstorm, you might lose some very expensive equipment. So what can you do? The best solution is, if you have space and money, to buy a dome. So to have your real private observatory in the garden. Have, for example, a look at Dylan O'Donnell, Star Stuff. He has a beautiful observatory dome in his backyard. And I'm a little bit jealous, I have to admit. But let's discuss the more realistic solutions. Now, the best solution that you can buy is this here. This is called Telegizmo 365. It's a cover, and inside here it has some aluminum foil or something like that, which is reflective. So it not only protects the gear from the rain, but also from the sunshine, that it's not that hot inside. And Telegizmo says this is made that you can leave your telescope 365 days, no matter what the weather is, outside. So I had two of them. What I can say is most people like them very much and say they have no issue at all. Now, my experience was that in both cases I had either some leaks or extreme dew build up inside, but whatever it is, I do not 100% trust them. But I agree that they're of very good quality, and if you look at the reviews, there are rarely any negative reviews. So I would recommend them, but on the other side, I would also say to not blindly trust them. If there's a huge thunderstorm forecasted, I would still take your telescope inside. If there's a long rain forecasted, I would also take your telescope inside. But if there's for a few days in summer, rather good weather forecasted, and it might give a drip or the other during the day, I would definitely leave it out with that. What I would recommend is that you put a bath towel over your telescope and then put the Telegizmo over it. That just is an additional safety, that if there's some dew build up inside, that if there's a leak out of whatever reason, first your towel will get soaked before anything runs into your equipment. And if you're looking up the prices, and we can actually do it afterwards in the shopping section, and you might go like, oh no, I don't want to pay that much, but I still want something if it's rather safe and I want to still cover my telescope, go on Amazon and look for some grill covers like this here. Costs around 30-40 bucks and absolutely does the trick. It's definitely not such a luxury solution as the Telesgizmo. Also, it's black, which might even actually increase the heat. Your telescope is exposed, but if you're not living in Death Valley, it might still work out. So the next topic I want to talk about is flats. And we will talk more about flats in, I think, part 11 when we talk about calibration frames. But generally what flats are is we take exposures with our cameras on daylight with our equipment so that the computer afterwards can calculate out all the dust bunnies we have sitting on our filters, all the vignetting that the telescope produces so that it's darker around the edges and things like that. There are various ways how to create these flats, and there's recommendations to do it with a white t-shirt over your scope pointing right at the blue sky, and this kind of works sometimes not so good. So my recommendation is to invest in a flat panel. What a flat panel is an LCD element which glows very uniformly. This is obviously a big one for my Schmidt-Cassegrain. There's smaller ones for a refractor. And so you put this on the front of your telescope and then you do the flats. And with something like that, which is not really that expensive, you get 100% perfect flats and you save yourself a lot of trouble and troubleshooting when otherwise your flats, out of one reason or the other, might not be perfect and you wonder what went wrong. We will discuss later in the course how to exactly create these flats with a flat panel, but also with a t-shirt. Now, last but not least, we come to the topic of energy management. And with energy, I mean electricity. Now let's just think for a moment what all needs electricity on our rig. It's the mount, it's the camera, which sometimes needs a lot of energy if it's a cooled one. It's the filter wheel, it's the electronic focuser, it's the dew heaters, then your mini computer if you have one. So there's a lot of things which need electricity. Now obviously you can connect everything separately, which will lead to a lot of cables which are prone to get entangled. So to have something on the rig that manages and centralizes your energy management is absolutely recommended. One thing I have already shown you, and that's the Eagle, which has that integrated into the computer. And that's a fabulous solution, but as we already discussed, it's also a very expensive solution. The ASI Air, to a certain limitation, has that also integrated. And then there are different producers, like here Pegasus Astro, who create these power boxes, which, as you can see, also have a lot of ways to distribute energy to all the devices that need it, and also to the dew heaters. And this is also very important, give a means to limit the electricity that you distribute to the dew heaters, because they should not make your lenses cook, but they should also give that much energy to the dew heaters that no dew is created. And if the temperature is way above the dew point, they do not have to give any energy at all to the dew heaters. So such little boxes, there's various manufacturers who create them, do that, as well as the Eagle. So as long as you're shooting from home, that's fine. But what if you go to a dark site outside where there's no electricity? What then? Well, then you need something like that. And anyway, they get much more popular by the day practically. Every day new models come out. These large batteries, this is a 600 watt hour battery, and that's also about the size that you need that you can shoot for a full night. So do not underestimate the energy consumption of all your equipment, especially the dew heaters and the cooled camera. They need heaps of energy, and it would be a shame if in the middle of the night you're running out of electricity and have to stop shooting. So get a big enough tank that you can support your rig for the whole night. So equipment wise, that's it. That's now really everything that you need to start your hobby. Obviously, until you realize you want a second telescope, a second mount, and so on and so on. So let's now go for the last time to Agena Astro and have a look at all these things, where you can find them and what the options are. Okay, here we are again on the Agena Astro site, and I already entered dew heater, and here you see these dew heater strips. You get them in all different sizes and length, and as you can see they range between $33, $50, so that's not a very big investment. By the way, something a little bit special here, if you have a Celestron Schmidt Cassegrain, they have dew heater rings. I actually have one on my SCT. It's really easy to install. It goes right around the front glass, so quite an ingenious solution here from Celestron. The next thing I want to show you here, dovetail. And usually these dovetails, they come in two different sizes. One are the Vixen style dovetails. They're the ones I think that you use most. They're a little bit thinner. And then you have the Losmandy style dovetails, and they're much wider. And then obviously they come in different length, and it's quite worthwhile to take them enough long so that if you have balancing issues that you are really flexible and you can move your scope forth and back. The counterpart then to the dovetails are the clamps. Here for example, and you see also the big price range also in something very simple here, from a no-name $54 clamp to a $145 Primaluce Lab clamp, obviously much bigger. But just to show you, there's a huge price range also here. When we look at spacers, you see right up here these very, very thin spacers to get every millimeter right when it comes to the back focus. And you also see here M42, M48, M54, these are the diameters. And before you order any spacer, check that you really order the right size. When we go then down here, we see the much longer spacers. So they can be 8 millimeter, even 20 millimeters. They come really in all sizes. At the beginning, if you do not have some yet, it makes sense to buy a set so that you have already the standard sizes. And then if it still doesn't work, then you can calculate what else you need and you can buy that separately. And by the way, just to show that briefly, ASCAR has actually created something quite ingenious, which is a back focus adjuster. So over the length of 4 millimeters, from 16 to 20 millimeters, you can adjust your back focus in very small steps. And I created a special video about these adjusters because they're quite unique, and I will put that also in the description. Now, something pretty odd you might have thought when I talked about the dome, about your own observatory, that would be not something you can simply buy, but you actually can. Now, funny enough, neither Agena Astro nor High Point Scientific have domes to ship, but actually First Light Optics, they have. Look at that here. So it ranges obviously in the thousands, from 3,000 pounds to 5,000 pounds. And I don't even want to know how much the shipping cost is, but you can really buy here a cool observatory, and I mean, $5,000. Others spend that money for a mount, and you have your own observatory in the garden. Looks pretty cool. So that's just a little bit for anybody of you who wants to go really, really, really serious. Now, when it comes to the telegizmos, China Astro also doesn't have them in stock, but here High Point Scientific has them. So here you can see they come also in all different sizes and shapes, made right for your configuration. So that's also something you should only buy once you actually have your mounts and everything set up, so you know the size, and you definitely buy then the right one. As stated, they're not that cheap. They cost around $150, also $200, but you know that a rig is safe outside. I think that's worth it. Now, when it comes to the flat panel, a very good alternative is here from Primaluce Lab, the Giotto. You get these also again in all the different sizes that you would need for your scope. And the good part here is that at any time, if you would like to do it a remote observatory, so you need that the flat panel automatically goes in front of your scope, they also have the Alto, which is then a motorized version, which you could add on. But also depending on which site you're looking, you find some no-name flat panels, which are way cheaper than these branded ones. So again, it depends how important is the reliability for you, and also how much you're willing to spend, obviously. Now, when it comes to energy management, you see here these power boxes from Pegasus Astro that I mentioned. They offer quite a few with different functionality and a different amount of ports. The one that I have is here the Pocket Power Box, which does quite a good job. But if you dig a little bit around, you will also find some other brands, some other boxes, which might do the same job as well, and which also might be a little bit cheaper. And as stated, for all the rest, for the batteries, for the grill cover and all this stuff, you find this on Amazon. And with that, we can finish our shopping. Okay, and with that, we're through. We know now everything about the equipment. But just by having a pile of equipment, we cannot do yet astrophotos. We first of all have to know how to do that, and second of all, we have also to be able to use the software. And all of that is the topic of the next 6 parts. So I hope to see you next time again, and until then, clear skies.